fellow Rotarians and guests. I'm Lori Alton, and I'm honored to serve as your club president for the Rotary year 2021-2022. The Rotary Club of Columbus has a storied past, beginning in 1915, when a group of civic-minded people saw the need for leaders to come together to find ways to make our community better. And now, 106 years later, we're a vibrant, strong club that continues to place service above self. Our club is diverse, with members across all sectors of business, government, military, healthcare, education, nonprofit and community service, ministry, and the arts. And we come together each week as friends with a shared purpose of learning how we can be more involved in the things that matter to all of us. And we leave committed to changing our community and changing lives. As Rotarians, we are people of action, and it shows. So welcome back to Rotary. Thank you for being here, and thank you for making a difference in our community. Well, hello, and welcome to the April 6th meeting of the Rotary Club of Columbus. How wonderful to see all 5 of you here today. so empty. And those of you watching online, it's great to see you too. You know, this is one of my favorite weeks of the year, not just because of spring break, but what else happens the first full week of April? Yes, best week of the year. And so excited about that. So would you now please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I would like to ask Fray McCormick to bring us today's invocation in accordance with his faith tradition. Fray?
Thank you, Lori. President Lori. I'm a Christian, and I am observing, along with other Christians around the world, the season of Lent. And Lent is a time of self-reflection. And when I do that, I think about going back to basics. And so, like Christians and non-Christians, people of all faith today, to go back to basics. And I think there's no better way to do that at times than to go and recite what was my children's middle school prayer. Because if you're ever going back to basics, it's middle school. So please pray with me. Our God, our Father, give us clean hands, clean words, and clean thoughts. Help us to stand for the hard right against the easy wrong. Keep us from habits that harm. Teach us to work as hard and play as fair in thy sight alone, as though all the world is watching. Forgive us when we are unkind, and help us to forgive others who are unkind to us. Send us chances to do a little good every day at no cost to ourselves. Help us to see that this gathering is one of those chances where we can each bring forth our talents. We ask that you give us clarity of mind, commitment to purpose, and precision of speech. Amen. Please remember the cans.
Thank you, Fray. At this time, it's my pleasure to ask Cedric Hill II to bring us today's news.
Good afternoon. Here's a look at a few headlines. Ukrainian President Zelensky gave a graphic account of the situation on the ground to the UN Security Council, warning that worse atrocities may emerge amid the ongoing retreat of Russian forces around Kyiv. Today, the White House announced new sanctions on Russian financial institutions and individuals, including President Putin's 2 adult daughters, as it aims to increase economic pressure on Russia. Right here in Columbus, Safe House's Electrical Apprenticeship Training Program will be holding its second graduation ceremony tomorrow. The organization designed the program to help people returning from incarceration, recovering from addiction, or those with low-paying jobs who do not have the time to attend school. 4 electrical companies teach the program, and after the ceremony, several employers will be on site to interview students for jobs. Yesterday, Tiger Woods said that he intends to play in the Masters and thinks he can win it, saying that he has no doubts about what he can do physically. The 15-time major champion has been away from competitive golf for over a year, having suffered serious leg injuries in a car crash in February of last year, where amputation of his right leg was considered. He's currently scheduled to tee off tomorrow at 10:34 a.m. The weather forecast for today, the high is 78, the low is 55. It's currently cloudy with scattered storms expected after 1 p.m. And the main time to watch for storms today is between 2 p.m. and midnight before a cold front approaches later tonight. So do your best to stay dry out there today.
Thank you, Cedric. And now it's my pleasure to call on President-elect Cedric Hill to introduce today's visiting Rotarians and guests.
Were you able to hear me? Is that better? Good afternoon, President Lori and fellow Rotarians. A bit of a tough act to follow. We have several guests, 3 guests of Rotarians today. Adelaide Kirk, our speaker today, has Johnny Williams, that's with Red Cross. It's their waste man is Johnny. Welcome. And Lori has actually Stanley Wright, that's with the Right Style. Stanley, where are you? Great, welcome. And Eric Cross is a guest of J. O'Neill, and Eric is with the Cross Law Firm. Eric, where are you? Welcome. If you all would join me in welcoming our guests for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cedric. We don't have a soldier visiting with us today, but I would like to call on Dick Nurnberg to make a special announcement.
President Laurie, fellow Rotarians, just because there's no soldier doesn't mean you get off scot-free. I just want to mention that at 1 o'clock, which is going to be a little too late for people to make, the National Infantry Museum is having a cake-cutting ceremony for winning the USA Today contest for Best Free Museum and Best History Museum. Friday at 4 o'clock, there will be a dedication to new displays for the most recent Medal of Honor recipients, our own Ralph Puckett and Sergeant Cash, and the public is invited to that at the museum. That's all.
Thank you. You know, it's always an exciting day in Rotary when we can welcome a brand new member, and so it's my pleasure to call on Jay O'Neill to introduce our most brand new Rotarian.
President Lori, fellow Rotarians, I've been working on this one for a minute, but I am so glad to welcome Eric Richard Cross to our group as our newest Rotarian. I have known Eric for many years. We've worked with several nonprofits together. We have taught Sunday school classes together. We have done life together. Eric is a great guy. I've been on him for years now to give Rotary a thought, but as he started a law practice a few years ago, started a family a few years ago, those of course take priority. You still have the job, you still have the family. I'm just assuming you've got it where you got some time, okay. I'm hoping those things, yeah, okay. I didn't ask that question, but yeah, so I would love you guys to give Eric a round of applause. Eric, this Rotary, I could talk about how big it is, but we're missing some folks, I'm not going to. I could talk about how old it is and the reputation it has, but we've already heard that. The best I can say is that we're the best, I'm not gonna lie. We're the best group, we're the best Rotarians, so you have joined the best. Eric, this is a pin. If you will wear this pin, even though people may know that you have a great reputation, it will help. It just, yeah. So if you have anything you'd like to say, thank you so much.
This is such an absolute honor for me. The standards that I know Rotary holds, just to be considered, means the world to me. And I will tell you, it's an absolute privilege to serve our community and try to better the lives for all the other people around us with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Eric, Jay said it so well, but you do join a club which is number 200, and you may have heard me say this when you were visiting before, but club number 200 out of now over 35,000 around the world. With a long history here in Columbus, over 100 years, and we all look forward to getting to know you better and working alongside you, so welcome. At this time, I would like to ask Vern Humphrey if he would please come up and make a special announcement.
President Lori, fellow Rotarians. A few months ago, I had the pleasure of introducing one of my heroes to you folks, a guy named Dan Parker. He talked about how he's striving to overcome his blindness. He was a racer, and now he's a blind racer. And he was building a car. Well, last Thursday, at the spaceport near El Paso, Texas, Dan Parker set the Guinness record for a blindfolded driver. They don't have one for a blind driver. They just put it under blindfolded. But he ran his first run at 211 miles an hour, his second run at 212 miles an hour. I don't know the specifics for that run, but his practice run the day before at 160, he stayed within a 10-foot path of width. And he can't see anything. So I just wanted to let y'all know that somebody that came to visit us has set a Guinness record. And he's a local Columbus person. And if you see him in town, tell him congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Vern. It's good news. I just have a few announcements. Basically, a reminder that the district conference is coming up at the end of this month. It will be the last weekend of April. It will be in beautiful Sandestin. It gives you an opportunity to get together with all of your friends from Columbus, as well as make new friends around our district. If you're interested, let us know in the office, and we will be happy to get you registered. Some of you have expressed an interest in donating to the efforts in Ukraine, and Rotary is participating in humanitarian aid for the Ukrainians. And if there is a way to do this through the District 6900 Charitable Fund and through the foundation and designate those funds for Ukraine, and as well as ensure that those funds are, lack of a better word, credited to our club as part of our foundation giving. So if you are interested in doing that, please let Julie know a couple of steps you have to go through. Right, Dick, you did this. A couple of hoops you have to jump through, but we'd be glad to help you do that. And lastly, our next Zoom happy hour is tomorrow afternoon from 6 to 8. Pop in whenever you feel like it. Stay for as long as you like, and of course you get a makeup. So joining me today at the head table is Fray McCormick, who brought us our invocation, and now it's my pleasure to call on Melanie Vineyard to introduce today's speaker. Melanie.
Good afternoon. I feel honored to be able to introduce Adelaide. We got to know each other in this club for the most part, and I have been on her board for the last few years and served as her board chair for a couple of years. So I'm excited to get to introduce her. Adelaide is a native of Columbus, and she attended Berry College and graduated in 1991 with a BA in both communications and business administration. She later earned her MBA from Columbus State University in 1996. Adelaide began a career in advertising immediately after college, working in radio, but quickly moved into television. She joined WTVM-TV in Columbus in 1998, where she spent 16 years in marketing and advertising sales. As a general sales manager, Adelaide led the revenue efforts of the station across both broadcast and digital platforms, and she hosted a daily segment, Business Break, in the morning news. And what you probably don't remember is I was on that one time, years ago. Just as nervous then, too. Adelaide believes in giving back to the community, and of course is a member of our Rotary Club of Columbus, where she's a Paul Harris Fellow and serves as chair of the Star Student Committee. Adelaide also served 6 years on the board of the United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley, where she served as chair of the Allocations Board, which oversees the community investment process. It was in this service that Adelaide found her passion for nonprofit. And after 23 years in the media business, she changed careers and joined the American Red Cross in 2014 as the Executive Director of Southwest Georgia. Adelaide loves the overall mission of the Red Cross and is dedicated as a blood donor and has deployed multiple times in support of disaster operations across the country. Adelaide resides in Harris County with her husband Duke, her Maltese Ghost, and she has 2 grown children, Austin, who's a CPA, and Landon, who is an Army Ranger.
I know y'all are used to hearing me come up here and talk about Star Student. That's all I've ever done. So I'm kind of excited to be here to talk about something else. And you know, I give that little speech. Most of you are probably tired of hearing it every time I talk to the students towards the beginning of that presentation. And I tell them to find something they're passionate about to do with their lives, because you can change the world if you're passionate about something. And I've been lucky that in 2 separate, what I call part 1 and part 2 of my life, I have found things to be passionate about. I loved the act of helping folks market their business and advertise their business and see it grow and hear their excitement when that happened. And I enjoyed that part. But, and I was fulfilled with that for a long time. But I have to tell you, what I do now and being able to stand there and be a helping hand when people are facing some of the darkest moments of their life for a whole host of reasons, I don't think anything can compare to that. So I just want to share a lot. I could talk for forever. I told Lori to be prepared. So I realize I only have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to get started. But, well, let's see. Maybe I already need to turn it on. How's that? Okay. So our mission as the Red Cross, and I always start with this because I think it's important, because lots of folks have ideas about what they think the Red Cross does. You probably already have a few ideas rattling around in your head right now. But the American Red Cross, our whole mission is to prevent and alleviate suffering in the face of emergency by, corralling the power and generosity of both donors and volunteers. So we're there for that immediate face in an emergency situation, and that takes on a lot of different forms and facets based across all the different lines of services that we have. And I'm going to try to rush through some of this. There's a lot of slides here, and I'm not going to belabor them, but I do want you guys to get a scope of what we do. And what we do, we are a national organization, but we work local. All of our services, what we do on a daily basis, affects the local communities that we're responsible for. So this kind of gives you just a sense. Our chapter is Southwest Georgia. I am responsible for 24 counties. We're one of 8 chapters in the state of Georgia, which is a region within the Red Cross. The Red Cross has 50 regions. Some are dual state regions. Georgia isn't in and of by itself a large region. And I will tell you that Georgia is one of the busiest regions across all of our lines of service in the entire country for everything. We have 3 offices. I, of course, have the one here in Columbus. I have one at Fort Benning, and I also have one in Albany. And we have about 275 volunteers that we work through. We do have a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm not glossing over this. I'm kind of rushing through everything, but it's important to us because we serve everyone, and we, based on our 7 fundamental principles of the Red Cross, we serve everyone without reserve to race, creed, color, region, orientation, you name it. I mean, that's not what we're about. We are humanitarians, and we serve, and that's always been the basis for what we do. But we know there's always a way to do it more with purpose and to be more culturally competent in everything that we do, so that when someone is going through the worst parts of their life, wherever that takes them, whether it's because they need blood, because they're in a disaster, whatever that is, that we are working with them in the way that respects everything about that person. So that's really important for us. There's 2 numbers on this that are important to me, and it's the 90 and the 90. So the one is that 90% of our volunteers, 90% of our workforce is actually volunteer. I cover 24 counties in case you missed that part, and I have 6 full-time employees, and 1 part-time. Over that 24 county area. But we do our work with those 275 volunteers that give of their time for their community to be able to give back and take care of their own community. So that's really important to us. The other 90 is that 90 cents of every dollar donated to the Red Cross goes to care. It goes to programs. So we are very big on not a lot of overhead and trying to make sure that we are good stewards of every donor dollar that is given to us, and 90% of every dollar that is donated goes to actual care and programs within the Red Cross. This slide, it made its way in here over the last couple of years. Just like every other organization, the Red Cross is touched by COVID. And in every single line of service, we had to change the way we did business. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can imagine that we had disasters didn't stop. Nothing we stopped. The collection of blood didn't stop. All of those things continued even though COVID existed. And while everybody else was drawing in, we were trying to figure out how to do and to keep going safely while respecting the safety and value of our own employees and our volunteers. So we had to change a lot of how we did everything, and a few of those details are up there. If you have any questions about that later, I'll be happy to answer some of those. But one of I'm going to go through real quickly all of our different, what we call lines of services. And so some you'll be more familiar with than others. This first one, we're there for disasters, all of them, big and small. It doesn't matter what they are. The interesting thing is that the number of disasters have increased over the last number of years. Specifically in 2014, we were averaging about one disaster response a month. Major disaster. And by major, we mean anything that costs us more than $250,000 to respond to. By 2020, we were doing more than 3 a month. And I haven't gotten the 2021 figures yet. So that level of disaster has steadily increased across the country. The population in those disaster-prone areas has increased as the population has grown, which makes the disaster that much more hard to deal with when there are more people there. What do we contribute that to? I could have a long discussion about whether it's climate change or, there's a lot of factors that move in there, but we do know that the climate has changed enough that it does create more of what we say in our business. If one more person says unprecedented, we're gonna choke them. So the unprecedented type events that we seem to see all the time now, where they just get larger and larger and larger. So there are definitely lots of disasters out there that we respond to, and they take a lot of different levels of care. So there's large disasters, the things you see and hear about a lot. Major tornadoes. I was a little worried yesterday afternoon. The 24 counties I have, 14 had tornado warnings yesterday at some point. So I was glued to a lot of different weather sources and reaching out to EMAs and those kind of things all afternoon. Kind of worried whether I was going to be here or not, to be honest, today. So we do those kind of things, tornadoes, hurricanes, all the large ones you think about, we do respond. And when we do those, we're the main things that you would think of. Our responsibility in the disaster realm as a partner of the federal government, we're not funded by the federal government, but as a partner to them, is sheltering, feeding, those types of things, bulk distribution of cleanup kits and those types of things. That's what we look at in the realm. Then we call them small-scale disasters. And disaster seems like a big word to use for a thunderstorm. But if the tree that came down on your house yesterday, like the person in Muskogee County whose mobile home was destroyed by a tree just yesterday, in yesterday's storm, it's pretty much a disaster when you no longer have anywhere to live. And that's why we call them. That's where we spend the bulk of our time. The most common disaster we respond to every day is a home fire. And again, disaster, big word for that. You're the one standing on the street at 2 a.m. in the morning because your home's burning down. That's a disaster. I mean, that is truly a disaster. And that's how we treat that person, because it's as traumatic for them to go through their home burning down as it is for the thousands that experience a hurricane altogether. So that's where we kind of live and breathe on a day-to-day basis within our communities is home fires. Interestingly enough, home fires we responded to last fiscal year, and we run from July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. Our last fiscal year, we helped 473 families in our chapter area who experienced a home fire. So far this year, we've helped 303. The vast majority of those are in what I'll kind of call the greater Columbus area, like the 9 Muskogee County and the areas around it. Most of the bulk of what we do is in those 9 counties. And that encompasses about 70% of what we do on an everyday basis. And then lastly is a category we never hoped to be in, but which we are, and that is mass casualty events. Those have become, unfortunately, a little more often, and they take a lot of different forms. And we didn't originally, we've always been into natural disasters, but man-made things happen too, and other things happen. The collapse of the building in Florida not too many months ago, the Pulse nightclub shootings, the shootings in Las Vegas, those kind of things. We have a role in that too. It typically is reconnection, supporting families, those types of things. We do support for first responders for large events like that. And we provide it with not just connecting and having canteening options, but we're also there with disaster mental health services, mental health professionals, and that can come and can talk through disaster spiritual care. We're really focused during a disaster. People aren't one-faceted. It's not just about, do you have somewhere to sleep? Do you have some, can you have clothes to put on? It's about what they experienced and where are they emotionally and where are they physically from a health perspective. What did they lose in a home fire? Did they run out the door and don't have their glasses and suddenly they can't see anything? So there's a lot of different ways that we can assist folks. But these are the kind of 3 buckets that we put everybody in. And we're there at a moment's notice. So every single day, every 8 minutes of every single day, we respond to, on average, at the Red Cross, a fire. I've told you our numbers here in our area, so it's pretty much every single day that we're responding somewhere. We're there no matter what time of day or night. And it doesn't matter whether your home is insured, if it's 10 o'clock at night, because, and I shouldn't say this because God love me, I know someone here is an insurance agent. But I always tell folks, your insurance agent probably is not standing on the curb with you at 10 p.m. at night or 2 a.m. in the morning saying, hey, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go tonight? But we will be. We'll get that phone call and we will go and we will be there whatever time of day at night, and we will be standing there ready to assist you with financial assistance, however, in whatever form that takes. All of our assistance does come, move ahead, there we go. So client assistance. So we're looking at immediate needs like I mentioned earlier. Things like, do you have your medicine? Do you have clothes? Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Do you have clothes to put on? Can you feed your family? Those are important. Those are the first 3. Then medically, are you okay? Did you lose all your medicine? Do you have your glasses or your contacts? Because then our nurses can start making those connections and helping make all those things happen and those refills happen that normally insurance companies might balk at because, you just filled it last week, you can't fill it again this week. So we help them work through all those processes. We also have an integrated condolence care team. So if there is a fatality involved, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, with a home fire, we have a whole team that jumps into action to support that family however we can as they go through that process. Additional recovery needs, you can see all of those listed there, some of the things I've already talked, and sometimes it's just holding the hand of the person as they go through that process. Think about it. You've lost your home, so you don't have any ID, but you can't go get your ID without a birth certificate, but you don't have a birth certificate, but then you can't get a copy of your birth certificate, you can't prove who you are. So it's like this big conundrum that goes around and around in a circle, and that's just one item of 1,000 that folks face when they're going through the recovery process, and that's what our recovery caseworkers, every family gets assigned their own individual caseworker, and they follow up with them and help them as much as possible to get back to that pre-disaster state, help them map out that road to recovery, whatever that looks like based on the resources that they have. Some folks have a lot of resources, some folks don't have a lot of resources. That goes back to us treating folks and looking at the disaster from an equity standpoint, because everybody doesn't start at the same point. It may all be affected by the same tornado, and it may be the same disaster or the same home fire, but even in an apartment complex, we can have 10 different families affected, and all of them have a different amount of resources, and we go individually to figure out what they need to get back to where they go. And we do that, the longer term recovery, by connecting them with resources within the community. Most disasters, especially large ones, but even small ones like home fires, are bigger than any one. We're the immediate piece and the bridge to the longer term recovery. And so that's where we work with agencies throughout Columbus and all of our areas to help with those needs that we can't fulfill, but that others can. So that's kind of where we are in disaster. This was an interesting thing that popped up in the last couple of years, and the first time someone said it to me, I was like, wow. So according to the Federal Reserve, a study they did, when facing an unexpected $400 expense, nearly 40% of all U.S. adults would either have to borrow money or sell personal items to cover it. Now that doesn't sound like I don't know, that knocked me sideways. I mean, I think I know the demographics of the communities we serve, but $400 doesn't seem like that much. And to think that could literally make someone financially insolvent or homeless if they experience a home fire is a little scary. And that's where the Red Cross steps in. More than 60% of those who we don't ask income information if they can voluntarily give it to us, 60% of those folks last year that we served lived below the poverty level. So it's very prevalent that we are that stepping stone, that place that gives them, not stepping stone, that net that keeps them from falling into financial insolvency and homelessness immediately when something like that happens, and to help them figure out where they're going next. Some folks' recovery might take a week. Some folks' recovery, we're still working with them 8 and 10 weeks later, depending on the specific situation that they're in. But more people than ever are in this precarious financial situation with no savings, so that any small thing literally can turn them into, make them have no home to live in. Now I'm going to transition to our next line of service, which is service to armed forces. That's what the Red Cross was founded on. Clara Barton did, service to the armed forces. And we're there for hope to be there for every portion of the journey, from the time they enlist at the beginning till when they're veterans. We do have services for veterans as well. So, and we try to be there all the way through that process. Preparing for military life isn't easy, and being a military family member is not easy. I'm a military mom, and I'm lucky enough that my son is actually with the 75th Ranger Regiment here at Fort Benning, but that constant moving and being separated from folks leaves you kind of in a vacuum often, without a whole network of friends and family when emergencies happen. So the main thing that we are congressionally mandated to do at the Red Cross, we're the only organization, we're congressionally mandated for emergency communications. So someone is deployed somewhere, they're even in the field not being where they can be communicated with, and an emergency happens back at home. What happens? Well, for those of you who have military family members, I mean, my son's been deployed and I've texted with him when he was overseas. But even I know that nothing happens if there's an emergency in my family. Nothing happens until the Red Cross verifies that information. So that's why we have what we call the Hero Care app, which is all his information is loaded into that. So it's one phone call, so that I don't have to think in the middle of an emergency. I punch that button, it's one phone call. I have everything, where he is, what unit he's with, and then I tell them what's going on, and then they verify that information, and then they give it back to his chain of command, and then they make the decision about can he come home, when can he come home, and if necessary, we are there to help him get home if it's needed. We can be part of that process. So that is something we're congressionally mandated to do. Now, in all their great foresight, the federal government does not fund us to do that. They just mandate that we do it. So, and that's okay. We have a huge office here at and by huge, I mean not spatially, but I mean a huge cadre of volunteers, because we operate more emergency communication messages out of the office we have at Fort Benning from those volunteers than anywhere else in the country. So we do a lot of this, communicating messages, and then other critical services as needed. Things happen in military families just like they happen everywhere else, and so we are dedicated to taking care of our military members and their families, and we will try to connect them with resources that can provide what they need when they need it. And we also offer a lot of reconnection classes, workshops, and they're everything from effective communication and dealing with trauma, talking about trauma, to coping with deployments. That's really hard when mom or dad is gone and deployed for a year or more, and then they come back home and everything's different in the family dynamic. And so we have workshops for that. We have them for caregivers. That's significant here. We were a pilot program here for a caregiver program that here in Columbus and at Fort Benning. And then a lot of several programs designed specifically for children and teenagers, and how to talk to them about all the things they're feeling. Teenagers don't like to pack up and go and move from place to place, and so it can be tough on them. And so we have a lot of things that are geared directly towards those. But we want to be there for the military, and I mentioned the Hero Care app. Want to be there for our military members and their families all the way through, and even for for our veterans. We work with veteran hospitals all across the state. Specifically, I mean, we have a great relationship with Martin Army Community Hospital. I was out there last Wednesday, so I wasn't here at Rotary. We did a Go Red event, and it was great to see their staff sporting Red Cross shirts because they were so excited because this week, we were able to get our volunteers. We have a huge volunteer program within the hospital that has filled a lot of gaps for them over the years, and they've been out of the hospital now for almost 2 years, well, right at 2 years. So they were starting back this week. The hospital was opening up and letting them come back in to work, and they were excited, and we were excited to be there. So we had a great event last week at the hospital. So we do have an MOU with Fort Benning and with most military institutions to provide volunteers, and we vet the volunteers. All our volunteers have background checks, those things to go through all of those systems before they're on the installation itself. Our third line of service is our blood services. So we provide more blood than any other blood banking institution in the country. We're the only ones that is national, that we go across the country. We provide more than 40% of the nation's blood supply. And most of you have heard at some point in the last few years that we've been, especially in the last few months, that we've been at a crisis level with blood. And we still are what we call, our blood supply is what we call vulnerable. We're one step above crisis at this point. Every 2 seconds, somebody in the U.S. needs blood. If it's not somebody sitting at your table, it's probably somebody at the table next to you. We don't think about all the ways and means that they need blood. It can be from trauma, it can be from surgery, it can be from treatment for illnesses such as sickle cell and cancer. The woman in that picture is actually someone that I know. Her name is Stephanie. She works for us. And she agreed to share her story when COVID first hit and people were closing and didn't have corporations and schools and students and universities to hold blood drives. The blood supply dropped, and it got very precarious there. And but you know, cancer didn't stop, and sickle cell anemia attacks didn't stop, and wrecks didn't stop. They did decrease. I will say that when people weren't traveling, but all of the need for blood was still there. It might have been slightly less in some places, but it was still there. And so Stephanie is a business coordinator for one of our offices up in Rome, Georgia, and she agreed to share her story. She's a cancer survivor, and her story, and it was very moving. But it affects people we know, and if you're not giving blood, I would encourage you to think about it and do it. Less than 3% of the American population that is eligible actually gives blood. Less than 3%. And they're supporting the needs of the 100% that's out there. You know, it's like, I used to interview on Business Break. I used to interview someone from the Columbus Water Department. And they would come every year about their annual event, the open house thing they did. And I would always say to her, you know, I take it for granted that I can flip that tap on and the clean water is going to come out, and I don't have to think twice about it. I think I kind of feel that way about blood. We all assume that we're going to pull up to the hospital, or our loved one is in a wreck, or they're giving birth and need extra blood units. We all assume that it's going to be there when we need it. And what we found out this last few months is that sometimes that's not the case. Not going to get upset. Had a phone call from someone in this community a few months ago, right after we had declared the blood crisis, and they were going through cancer treatments, and the wife called me and said, it was someone I knew, and said, is there anything you can do? He barely can talk. He needs a blood transfusion. His doctor has prescribed it, and we got to the hospital, and he couldn't have it. Is there anything you can do? They said he wasn't sick enough, basically, was what it amounted to. And that's because there was a limited amount of blood on the shelves, and the hospital was having to triage how sick people were to whether they could have the blood. And he hadn't quite reached that threshold yet, even though he could not sit up and barely talk. And I cried for 10 minutes after I hung up the phone, because there really wasn't any, because those are medical decisions, there's nothing I can do about it. But blood it's a critical part of our healthcare infrastructure. So if you aren't giving blood, then please make a point of doing so. Last section that we'll talk about is making our name, because of all the fires that we see and respond to, we try to make sure that we help folks repair. So we install free smoke alarms in homes. trying to decrease injuries. Interestingly enough, Columbus, Georgia ranks 20th on the Hartford Index for home fire risks. So there's a lot going on. Georgia has a really high fire fatality rate. It's increased over the last few years. We've already had 21 fire fatalities in Georgia this year. So we do a lot of preparedness programs. We install the alarms for free. Anybody that asks us, we will go out and install them. We also do preparedness. We work with all of our schools, and we go in there and do some preparedness projects, talking about common things that kids will actually experience in their life, trying to get them ready to experience the potential trauma, as well as other things like hands-only CPR. We have Ready Rating, which has helped corporations figure out, is their company ready for a disaster? So a lot of different preparedness efforts. And then, of course, we have the training services side of it, which is skills, CPR, first aid, those kind of things that are very prevalent. All throughout, we do a lot of that here in the Columbus area. And then we help vulnerable people. So we have Red Crossers in countries surrounding Ukraine right now. We have 30 of our staff, our SAS, Service Armed Forces staff, one from Georgia, who are there supporting our military folks. So they deploy just like the military does. So that's another big area that we're supporting the International Federation of the Red Cross and the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and their efforts. We are financially supporting all of those over in the area surrounding Ukraine right now. But we do need all of you. So, there's always something you can do. People say, what can I do to help? So I would tell you, give blood, first and foremost. Sponsor a blood drive if you can at your place of business or a civic organization. Volunteer your time. And then, of course, always make a financial donation to the Red Cross. So I know I sped through that last part because I realized it was so close to 1. So feel free. I'll answer a question if anybody has any, but I will be here if anybody needs anything.
Tell us where, if we wanted to leave today and give blood, where could we go?
So that we are lucky here in Columbus. There is a donor center up on Veterans Parkway, 7490 Veterans Parkway, I believe is the actual address, and it is open every day but Monday. So you can donate blood there pretty much any day. We do ask for people to make appointments just because it helps us space out and for staffing reasons.
Adelaide, thank you so much. The message I'm taking away is you need blood. We need to give blood, and it could be us who needs the blood or a member of our family. So thank you. As you know, as a Rotarian, we will place a children's book in the local library with Adelaide's name on it to commemorate your visit. And there will be a replay of today's program on our Facebook page as well as a YouTube link. And I would like to re-welcome our visitors today. Thank you for being here. And don't forget our next Zoom happy hour tomorrow afternoon from 6 to 8. And next week's program will actually be our GRSP student, Haisha Haddad, will be her farewell presentation to us. And until we meet next week, let's continue to make a difference. This is good.